Hello, my name is Charlotte, and I am 32 years old. My life is built along neat, predictable lines. I work as a procurement manager for one of Austin's logistics companies, and I live in a modest but own apartment where everything has its place. Nothing extraordinary, but it is my fortress, my territory of silence and peace. I have a mother and a sister, Candace, who is 3 years older. My father passed away when I was 8. My mother raised us alone, having worked as a nurse in a hospital all her life. Her days were long and draining, steeped in the smell of antiseptic and fatigue. But she did what she had to do, without complaint, without a hint of self-pity. She retired 5 years ago, having saved no significant funds. No pension fund, no financial cushion, just a modest Social Security payment and the meager savings she managed to put aside from years of hard labor. 4 years ago, a phone call sliced through the mundanity of that evening. It was my mother. "Charlotte, I need to talk to you about something important." Her voice sounded tense and dry. "The bank is threatening to foreclose on my house. I can't keep up with the mortgage payments. It's $2,000 a month, and my pension just isn't enough." Something heavy and cold snapped inside me and slowly sank to the pit of my stomach. "Have you tried to refinance the loan or find another way out?" I asked, already almost knowing the answer. "I tried. They deny me. I have a fixed income now, and it's not enough." A helpless note crept into her voice, replaced by a businesslike sharpness. "What about Candace? Maybe she can help?" "Candace just had a baby, Mom. She doesn't have any extra money right now. You know what it's like with a newborn. Everything is so expensive." I sank onto the sofa and the room swam around me. $2,000 a month, a sum that was by no means extra for me either. But it was the house of my childhood, the house whose walls still held the ghostly trace of my father, which smelled of apple pies on Sundays, and where his old raincoat once hung. I couldn't let them take it. "All right," I said, and the word hung in the air, full of resolve and quiet despair. "I'll help. I'll send you money every month." "Thank you, dear." Her voice instantly softened, acquiring a long-forgotten tenderness. "You're just saving my life." 4 years have passed since then. 4 years during which I dutifully sent my mother $2,000 every month, as if paying off some ruthless contract with the past. I cut all my expenses to the minimum. No vacations away from dusty Austin, no new dresses to lift my spirits, no dinners at restaurants with their warm light and strangers' voices. I brought my lunch to work in a plastic container and switched from my car to the bus to save on gas. My life turned into a sort of sparse blueprint where every line was drawn with this monthly payment in mind. I learned to live as frugally as I possibly could, denying myself the slightest joys to preserve those walls that were once my home. Mother rarely thanked me. Sometimes a short, dry message would arrive on my phone. "Got the money." More often, there was just silence. Gradually, I began to feel that these transfers were taken for granted by her, as an onerous but inevitable tribute I was obliged to pay for the very fact of my existence. Last Tuesday evening, I was sitting on my sofa, staring at the flickering TV screen, when my phone vibrated quietly in my hand. A video message from Uncle Martin, my mother's younger brother. He was the life of all family gatherings, the eternal chronicler of our meetings, tirelessly filming everything with his camera. I opened the message. The screen showed a family dinner. I saw everyone sitting around the large dining table in my mother's house. Mom herself at the head of the table, like a queen. Next to her, Candace with her husband. Aunt Deborah, Uncle Martin behind the camera, several cousins. They were all laughing, talking, their faces lit with warmth and shared merriment. I wasn't there. I hadn't even been invited. I knew nothing about this dinner. Uncle Martin's camera shook, and I heard his voice, apparently addressing someone at the table. "Charlotte is very generous with that mortgage money. $2,000 a month for 4 years. That's a fortune." And then my mother's voice rang out loud and clear, cutting through the general din. "Charlotte owes me. I gave birth to her. I raised her for 18 years. She's just paying back her debt. She doesn't have a husband or kids anyway. Let her be useful for something. Our cash cow." The laughter that followed her words wasn't polite tittering, but loud, booming, genuine laughter coming from the depths. It filled the room from my phone screen, turning into a deafening roar that made my ears ring. This sound physically crashed down on me, pinning me to the sofa. And then Candace added her own voice, clear as a crystal bell. She always tried so desperately to prove she was worth something. It looked kind of pathetic. Aunt Deborah, without missing a beat, added her own dose of venom. Well, at least she's good for something. Without that money, she'd be completely useless. And again, that united, crushing laughter. I sat, unable to move, and stared at the bright screen. The feeling was as if someone had punched me hard in the solar plexus. The air left my lungs in a single gust, and I couldn't inhale, frozen in a silent grimace. Instinct worked faster than thought. With trembling fingers, I managed to download the video to my phone before it disappeared without a trace. About 2 minutes later, Uncle Martin must have realized the monstrosity of his mistake, deleted the message. He had sent it to the wrong person, and that blunder of his forever changed my world. I didn't sleep a wink all night. That evening, I spent rewatching the short clip over and over until my relatives' faces blurred into a kaleidoscope of familiar yet so alien features. With each repetition, my mother's words wounded me with a new, refined force, digging into my very core. And from this stupor, a long-buried past began to rise. I remembered my childhood. After Dad's death, Mom buried herself in work, trying to drown her grief. She was never home. Candace and I grew up practically on our own. But for some reason, Candace became her favorite. She was the beauty, the social butterfly, the child Mom bragged about to her friends. I always remained in the shadows, forever trying to prove that I was worth something too. When I made the school honor roll, Mom tossed out, rushing past, "Well, at least you're not completely useless." When Candace barely graduated from high school with mediocre grades, Mom threw a grand party in her honor and bought her a car. After school, I went to college, getting a partial scholarship. It covered only about half the tuition. To pay for the rest, I worked 2 jobs simultaneously. During the day, I stood behind the counter at a coffee shop, and at night, when the city slept, I scrubbed empty office buildings. I existed in a state of permanent exhaustion, cramming from textbooks between shifts, barely knowing sleep. Mom never offered help. She said I was smart enough to manage on my own. But she helped Candace regularly, paid for her apartment when she moved out, bought her furniture, clothes, whatever she wanted. I got my degree in business management, found a good job, and continued to work hard as I was accustomed. And when 4 years ago, Mom called pleading for help, I agreed without a shadow of a doubt, because deep down, I nurtured a hope. Maybe now I would finally do something truly important for her. But it was an illusion. I was just a cash cow. The next morning, my face raw from a sleepless night, I dialed the mortgage company's number. I needed facts, figures, the cold and indifferent truth. "I'm calling regarding the mortgage loan for the property at 1847 Maple Street," I said, providing my verification details. "I need information on the current account status." The woman on the other end checked the data and replied in an even, impersonal voice. "The current outstanding balance on the loan is $18,000. The next payment is due in 13 days. According to the payment schedule, the mortgage will be fully paid off in 9 months." I thanked her and hung up. The numbers hung in the kitchen silence. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and started gathering documents, as if preparing a dossier. I pulled out all the bank statements, neatly recording 4 years of my financial hard labor, the monthly transfers of $2,000. I saved each one as a separate PDF file. Then I checked my email, finding all the confirmation messages from my mother, all my texts sent to her. "Mom, did you get the transfer?" I took screenshots of everything. I compiled it all into one clearly structured folder on my computer. The next payment was due in 13 days, on a Monday. I made a decision. I would not send that money. And I wouldn't tell my mother. I suddenly had a terrible desire to see what would happen. That weekend was a time of strange, almost surgical calm for me. I spent it pouring out onto the white screen the words that had been accumulating in me for years. I was writing a letter. Detailed, thorough, precise. In it, I explained everything. 4 years of monthly mortgage payments, the cold gratitude that turned into silent expectation. And that video, where my own mother behind my back easily calls me a cash cow, and my family, my sister, my aunt, joins that humiliating chorus. I attached the video itself to the letter, like evidence. All the bank statements meticulously documenting the financial side of my debt. All the confirmation emails. I made a clear list of recipients, my mother's relatives, her neighbors, friends from her church community. They all needed to know what their kind and needy parishioner was really like. Monday morning arrived, the day the payment was due, but never came. At exactly 9 o'clock, my phone rang. I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. "Charlotte, the mortgage payment is due today. I haven't seen the transfer yet." My mother's voice was even, but there was a steely note of demand in it. "I'm not paying," I said. And the echo of those words resonated in my ears with a pure, almost musical sound. "I won't be sending you any more money. I'm tired of being your cash cow." A deathly silence fell on the other end of the line, thick and ringing. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, feigning confusion. "Where did you—" "Uncle Martin accidentally sent me that video. I heard everything, Mom. Every word. About how I owe you, about how I'm useless, about how I'm just repaying some debt for being born." "Charlotte, that was just table talk." Her tone became fussy, apologetic. "You always exaggerate everything. You know how people chat at family dinners." "I heard exactly what you said, and the tone you said it in. It's over." I hung up, not giving her a chance to object. Then I opened my email and clicked send. The letter with its heavy attachment flew off to Uncle Martin, Aunt Deborah, all the cousins, my mother's neighbors, people from her church council, everyone I thought should see her true face. Within the next hour, my phone became the epicenter of chaos. It exploded with calls, vibrated with texts, choked on voice messages. I ignored most calls, but read the texts. Uncle Martin: "Charlotte, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she felt that way about you. I thought it was just an unfortunate family joke. I would never have laughed if I knew the truth." Aunt Deborah: "Taking private family conversations public is low. You're blowing up unnecessary drama." Candace: "You're destroying the family over some stupid joke. Do you even realize what you've done?" Mom sent a series of angry messages, culminating in a short, knife-like phrase: "You are dead to me." But there were other voices. Cousin Ashley: "I didn't know you were paying the mortgage all this time. What she said, it's disgusting. I'm so sorry." Mrs. Patterson, a neighbor: "I always thought you were such a sweet, kind girl. I'm shocked by what I saw." And then a call came from an unknown number. "Charlotte, this is Linda. I'm the treasurer at your mother's church. I received your letter with the video and documents. Let me clarify something. Is it true that you have been paying your mother's mortgage for the last 4 years?" "Yes, $2,000 every month." Linda on the other end fell silent, and in the quiet, I could almost hear the puzzle pieces clicking into place in her head. "Your mother," she finally said, her voice becoming firm and official, "has also been receiving assistance from the church's Needy Fund for the past 3 years. She claimed she was facing foreclosure and that her children refused to help her." It felt like I'd been punched in the gut again. My vision darkened. "What?" "She received monthly payments, about $1,000. The church council will conduct an investigation. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." After I hung up, I remained sitting in the deathly silence, feeling reality slowly and irreversibly shift its contours. My mother was taking money from the church. At the very time I was squeezing out $2,000 monthly, denying myself the smallest joys, she was holding out her hand for charity, pretending to be abandoned and destitute. She lied to them. She lied to everyone who was willing to help her. The grand scale of this deception echoed within me with an icy, soundless void. That same day, as if trying to strike preemptively, Mom unleashed a lengthy post on Facebook. "My own child has betrayed me and is spreading vile lies to destroy my reputation," her words read, so sincere and full of pain to the uninitiated. I raised her, loved her with all my heart, and this is how she repays me." Comments poured in one after another like hail. Some, those who only saw her version, expressed support and outrage at my actions. But others, who had received my letter, joined the virtual fray, their responses precise and relentless. "I saw the video. It's not a lie. Maybe you should have treated your daughter differently?" The public battlefield was open. The next day, a hurricane named Candace stormed into my orderly office life. She burst into the lobby, her face contorted with a mask of rage, and, ignoring everyone present, began screaming at me. Her voice, usually clear and melodic, now grating with metallic notes. "You're destroying Mom's life. You're tearing our family apart. And all because of your touchiness, because your feelings got hurt." Fortunately, security reacted instantly. "Ma'am, you need to leave the building," a firm, brook-no-argument voice of a guard sounded. They escorted her out under the indifferent yet curious gazes of my colleagues. I, feeling their heavy stares on me, returned to my office and with trembling hands dialed my lawyer, Jennifer's number. "I need to consult with you," I said, my voice shaking. "An incident has occurred." I told her everything: the video, the money, the church fraud, and today's visit from my sister. "You need a restraining order," Jennifer stated without hesitation. "Your sister's actions qualify as harassment. If she shows up again, the consequences could be much more serious." "All right," I exhaled, feeling a weight settle at my core. "Let's do it." A week later, there was another call from Linda at the church. "The church council has completed its internal investigation," she reported in an even, dispassionate tone. "It has been determined that your mother fraudulently obtained approximately $35,000 over 3 years. We demand full restitution and have already handed the materials over to the police for criminal charges." I thanked her and hung up. Now my mother had problems not with her family, but with the law. This was no longer drama, it was a criminal offense. A few days later, the phone rang. And this time, it was Ashley. "Can we meet?" My cousin's voice sounded anxious. "I need to tell you something." We met at a quiet cafe near my office. Ashley nervously fiddled with a napkin. "2 years ago, your mom called me. She said that neither you nor Candace were helping her, and she might lose the house. She begged me to lend her $15,000. I gave it to her. She swore she'd pay it back, but she never did. I didn't want to make a fuss because she's family. But when I saw that video and found out you'd been paying her mortgage all along, I realized she'd deceived me too. I'm so sorry, Charlotte." "It's not your fault," I replied quietly, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. "Thank you for telling me. And if your testimony is needed, would you be willing to give it?" "Of course." 3 weeks later, I got a call from Uncle Martin. His voice was tired and resigned. "Charlotte, your mother is not doing well. She's drinking a lot, doesn't leave the house, keeps saying she's going to lose everything. The foreclosure process starts in 3 weeks. He paused, and in the silence I could hear his heavy breathing. "The church wants their money back. Her first lawyer dropped her case when he learned all the details of the fraud." "I'm genuinely sorry to hear that," I replied, and my words held neither gloating nor sympathy, just a statement of fact. "But she brought these troubles upon herself." He hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, feeling drained and in a state of strange numbness, I found a letter in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a note scrawled in my mother's messy, jumping handwriting. It was long, rambling, and full of pathetic apologies intertwined with pitiful excuses. Phrases were tangled, thoughts jumped from one to another, but the main message came through with agonizing clarity. "Please, help me save the house. I've made terrible mistakes, I understand that now, but I am still your mother. Please." I sat down at the kitchen table, its cold surface lit by the morning sun, and took a clean sheet of paper. My response came quickly, measured and concise, as if carved in stone. "I forgive you," I wrote, feeling a heavy burden lift from my shoulders with each letter. "I do this for my own peace of mind, to move on. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It does not obligate me to save you from the consequences of your own actions. You made your choice. Now you must live with it." The next morning, I dropped the envelope into the mailbox, as if sealing an entire era of my life. A few days later, Jennifer called. Her voice was even and businesslike, but with a hint of irony. Your mother's new lawyer has made contact. They are suing you. A lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation. They are demanding $100,000 and a public apology in the local newspaper. I couldn't hold back a short, dry laugh, more like an exhale. Are they serious? Suing me after everything she's done? Quite serious, Jennifer confirmed. But don't worry, I'm already preparing a response. We will file a countersuit for the return of all mortgage payments you made, with interest, as well as compensation for emotional damages. A week later, my phone presented another surprise. The display showed a name I hadn't encountered since high school: Sarah Mitchell. I work for a local cable news channel now, she introduced herself immediately. I heard the story about your mother. It's just incredible. Would you be willing to give an interview? It's all here: church fraud, family betrayal, financial lies. People need to see stories like this. I hesitated for only a moment. A part of me, raised with strict rules about not airing dirty laundry, resisted. But another, new, strengthened part of me longed for the truth to finally be heard, loud and clear. All right, I said. I agree. The interview aired 3 days later. Sarah did her job brilliantly, constructing the narrative clearly and impartially. She talked about my 4 years of payments, the cynical cash cow nickname, the $35,000 my mother obtained from the church deceptively. The segment even featured a short but staggering excerpt from that very video with her voice. The effect was immediate. My phone once again became a mad, vibrating marathon. Some voices supported me, others condemned me for the publicity. However, the fact of the church money fraud caused universal and unanimous outrage. Stealing from a sanctuary, that crossed all conceivable boundaries. Meanwhile, the mortgage company, not wasting time, initiated the foreclosure process. The first auction was scheduled for a month and a half later. A chance encounter happened in the produce section of a local supermarket. I was choosing avocados and suddenly saw her. She looked dreadful. Her hair, once styled with her characteristic neatness, was now greasy and tangled, her face haggard, and her clothes hung on her limply. She noticed me and slowly approached, her eyes full of plea. "Charlotte, I'm begging you, help me. The church wants the money. The bank is taking the house." Candace has turned her back on me. "You brought these troubles upon yourself," I replied, and my voice sounded firm and calm. "I was wrong, I know, but I'm your mother. You can't just abandon me like this." "You abandoned me my whole life. You called me useless. You used my money while lying to everyone that I wasn't helping you. You robbed people who believed you and wanted to help." Her face contorted. Despair like a mask fell away, revealing the familiar, acrid malice. "Just like your father," she hissed, vindictive and selfish. "No, I'm not like Dad at all," I replied, and the words, cold and sharp, fell between us like shards of glass. "And you never loved him. You never loved me either. All your life you've only loved yourself. And now you're left alone with your reflection, with absolutely nothing." I turned and walked away, leaving her in the middle of the brightly lit sales floor. Somewhere behind me, I heard her stifled, rage-filled cry, but I didn't look back. Every step on the tiled floor echoed in my temples with the clear, relentless rhythm of a final farewell. 3 weeks later, Jennifer called with news. "The trial is set for next month, but your mother's lawyer just made a settlement offer," she reported in her even, professional voice. "They are withdrawing their lawsuit completely. All demands for the $100,000 for defamation and emotional distress are dropped. In exchange, you drop your claims for the return of the mortgage payments. The parties go their separate ways with no further obligations. The criminal case for church fraud, of course, continues independently of this civil agreement." "So she won't be returning the $96,000 to me?" I clarified, feeling a bitter resentment boil in my chest. "That is what they are proposing. The decision is yours." I thought about it. $96,000. A huge sum, burned out of my life by years of deprivation. But a trial meant new expenses, endless legal costs, days torn from work, unbearable stress. And, to be completely honest with myself, I just desperately wanted it all to be over. I had exhausted my capacity for fighting. I accept their terms, I exhaled. I just want to move forward, leave this behind. All right, I'll inform them of your decision. The settlement was officially formalized a week later. The lawsuit disappeared from my horizon without a trace. I didn't get my money back, but I also wasn't dragged into an exhausting legal battle. It was a Pyrrhic victory, smelling of ashes, but it granted the desired peace. The house auction took place on schedule. Contrary to fears, the property was sold for a price exceeding the remaining debt. After deducting all fees and expenses, about $40,000 remained for my mother. From Uncle Martin, I learned that with that money, she bought an old, dilapidated house on the very outskirts of town, more like a ruin. Aunt Deborah, true to her unwavering indulgence, helped her with additional funds to make the dwelling at least marginally habitable. The criminal case for church fraud, meanwhile, proceeded on its own. Eventually, Mom pleaded guilty. The court sentenced her to 18 months of probation and ordered her to fully reimburse the church the $35,000. Candace disappeared from my life completely. She publicly declared me a traitor who had trampled the family on social media and blocked me everywhere. 6 months after the dust began to settle, my boss called me into his office. "Charlotte, we can't help but note how impressed we are with your work lately," he said, and genuine respect was visible in his eyes. "We are offering you a promotion, the position of Senior Procurement Manager, a corresponding salary increase, a larger office, and, of course, more responsibility." I agreed without a moment's hesitation. Now I was sitting in my new office, behind a spacious desk, in front of a huge window overlooking all of Austin. I looked at the city bathed in the sunset light, and for the first time in many, many years, felt my lungs fill with air, fully and completely. A few weeks later, I was filling up my car at a gas station near my home, and suddenly I saw a beat-up sedan pull up to the opposite pump, and my mother got out. Our eyes met across the space, divided by asphalt and years of silence. She didn't approach, didn't nod, didn't make a single gesture. She just silently got back in her car and drove away. And in that moment, I felt not pain, not bitterness, but only one thing, all-consuming, bottomless relief. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to see her. That part of my life was definitively turned over. A few days after that fleeting but significant encounter at the gas station, I was sitting with Ashley at a table in a cozy cafe. We had started seeing each other much more often after everything that had happened to our family. She turned out to be one of those rare relatives who wasn't afraid to take my side, whose support was quiet but steadfast. "Have you heard anything about your mom?" she asked cautiously, pushing her cappuccino cup away. "No," I replied, and not a single note in my voice wavered. "I don't communicate with her, and I don't want to." Ashley thoughtfully stirred her coffee with a spoon, her face expressing slight awkwardness. "I heard something from other relatives," she began, choosing her words. "I thought you should know. She's living in that old house on the outskirts, and she's working 2 jobs now to pay back the debt to the church. During the day as a cashier at a grocery store, and at night cleaning offices." I remained silent, listening to my feelings. Deep inside, a tiny, fading spark of regret stirred, but mostly I felt just a vast, all-encompassing emptiness, an emotional numbness that had become my defense. "She drinks a lot," Ashley continued quietly. "Uncle Martin visited her last month. He said the house reeks of stale alcohol and cheap wine. Empty bottles are lying around everywhere. She hardly talks to anyone except Aunt Deborah." "And Candace?" I couldn't help asking. "Candace isn't talking to her either. After the house was sold, when your mom stopped being a source of money for her, Candace just cut all ties. I think she finally realized she couldn't get anything else from her." This news didn't surprise me. Candace had always built relationships based on pragmatic benefit. "Your mom is completely isolated now," Ashley summarized. "Work, home, drinking, and so on in a circle. Some from the church community tried to reach out to her, but she shut everyone out. I just thought you should know." We finished our coffee, and the conversation smoothly moved on to other, more peaceful topics. Ashley talked about her kids, her job, about everyday trifles. These were ordinary, unassuming conversations, and it was incredibly pleasant to talk about something that had no relation whatsoever to my mother. After all I'd been through, I firmly decided to change my life. For 4 long years, $2,000 left my account every month. Now that money, that energy, that part of me remained with me. I could finally afford to live for myself. I moved out of my modest apartment into a new, more spacious and bright living space. Still a 1-bedroom, but with high ceilings, panoramic windows, and a view of the smoky silhouettes of hills on the horizon. I slowly picked out new furniture, arranging the space the way I had always dreamed. For the first time, it truly reflected my taste, my self. It seemed I had finally started to live, not just survive in a regime of strict economy. I discovered the world of travel. Before, a vacation had been an unaffordable luxury. Now I stood on the sun-drenched slopes of Colorado, breathing the thin mountain air during hikes. I heard the deafening roar of the Pacific Ocean in California and was enthralled by the bright lights of Broadway musicals in New York. All those places that were once just pictures in my dreams, while I was torn between 2 jobs and money transfers. I also found the courage to start therapy. I acutely needed someone with whom I could unpack the burden of the past. My therapist, Dr. Chen, helped me understand that my mother's attitude towards me wasn't my fault, that I didn't owe her eternal gratitude just for the fact of my birth, that I had every right to defend my boundaries and my peace of mind. I discovered hobbies for which I previously had neither time nor money. My hands were now learning to feel clay in pottery classes. I joined a book club where we could argue about literature until we were hoarse. I started attending a nearby yoga studio where I learned to feel my body again and find stability in it. And then he appeared in my life, Marcus. We made eye contact at the counter of a coffee shop near my office. He turned out to be a software engineer, a man with an easygoing nature and a kind heart, possessing the rare gift of being able to listen. We had been dating for about 3 months, and those months were filled with an ease and mutual understanding I had lacked all my life. One Saturday morning, as golden light poured through the window, Marcus and I were having breakfast in my new apartment, sitting on the soft sofa, sipping aromatic coffee, and eating it with golden pancakes and maple syrup. And in this cozy moment, he, putting his mug aside, asked the question that had been in the air since we first met. "Do you even talk to your mother?" "No," I replied, and the words sounded not like a confession, but a statement of a long-established fact. I haven't spoken to her in almost a year. "Do you miss her?" he pressed on, and his gaze was full not of idle curiosity, but of sincere concern. I thought, letting the silence stretch, listening to myself. "No," I finally said with a clarity that surprised even me. "I miss the idea of having a mother, that abstract image of care and support. But I don't miss her, that specific woman who was never truly a mother to me in the sense the word is meant to convey." "What about your sister, Candace?" he continued. "She made her conscious choice." My voice remained even and calm. "She decided to remain on our mother's side, and consequently against me. And I'm perfectly fine with that." Marcus simply nodded, and in that nod, there was more understanding than in any words. That must have been incredibly difficult, to break so sharply with your entire family. It was difficult, I agreed, but it was necessary for my survival, both spiritual and emotional. They used me, Marcus. I wasn't a person to them, not a daughter or a sister, but a function. And they were only interested in what I could do for them, what resources I could provide. A few weeks later, fate, as if wanting to test the strength of the boundaries I had built, brought us face to face again in the same grocery store. I turned into the dairy aisle and almost collided with her, with my mother, who stood with a basket containing only a loaf of stale bread, a few cans of soup, and a bottle of the cheapest wine. She looked even more broken and aged than the last time. Her clothes hung on her baggily and limply, and her face bore the stamp of such fatigue and exhaustion that it seemed it might crumble to dust at any moment. We looked at each other for just an instant, one long, drawn-out moment that contained our entire shared and yet so different life. But neither of us uttered a sound, took a step forward. Then she simply turned and walked away, abandoning her half-empty basket right in the middle of the aisle, and disappeared through the glass doors, leaving behind only a heavy silence. I stood motionless, watching her go, listening to my feelings, expecting to be overwhelmed by a wave of grief, guilt, or at the very least righteous anger. But inside, there was only a serene, almost ringing emptiness, and the only palpable feeling was the profoundest relief that this absurd and painful encounter had ended without truly beginning. I calmly finished my shopping and went home, where Marcus was already waiting for me. We planned to cook dinner together and then watch a movie, and in these simple, mundane, paired rituals, for which I never had the time or mental energy while I was sending all my money to my mother, lay the entire charm of my new, real life. And that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling where the streetlights cast dancing shadows, I reflected on everything that had happened over this past pivotal year. The loss of a mother, the loss of a sister, the loss of most of my kin. By all the rules of drama, this should have felt like a painful loss, like abandoning a part of myself. But to my own surprise, I felt something completely different. Not emptiness, but lightness. Not pain, but liberation. And this feeling was like a long-awaited freedom, granted to me by myself. I had spent so many long years trying to prove I was worth something in the eyes of people who were inherently incapable of seeing my value. I worked 2 jobs to pay for college. I sent my mother $96,000 over 4 years. I gave and gave and gave until I was completely drained. And in return, I received only the humiliating nickname Cash Cow and poisonous reproaches about my own uselessness. Now I had forever closed that exhausted chapter. I stopped giving to those who didn't value my generosity, stopped trying to prove anything to those who would never be satisfied, stopped, finally, setting myself on fire to warm others. Now I had a great job with a promotion and a decent salary. I had a cozy apartment with a view of the hills. I had engaging hobbies, loyal friends, and a boyfriend who genuinely cared for me. I traveled, tried new things, lived my life to the fullest, not dragged out a miserable existence in survival mode. And I wished no ill upon my mother, felt no secret joy at her suffering. I simply stopped thinking about her, crossed her out of my field of attention, for she had definitively and irrevocably become a part of my past, which had not the slightest chance of influencing my future.